Yeah. I guess I'll be back. All right, I'll ask for a motion to come back into open session.
Make that motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Yes. Yes.
So, reporting out, the committee received advice from the administration and the Tiverton Police Department regarding security. No votes were taken. Welcome to our February 21st, 2017 meeting of the Tiverton School District to discuss school safety. I'll ask that you please rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence in memory of the victims of the recent shooting in Florida. Thank you. Sorry, I seem to be losing my voice all of a sudden. So tonight's meeting is really to give an opportunity for the administration, teachers, staff, students, members of the public, parents, to ask questions, raise their concerns. I'd like to recognize two of our legislative delegation, Senators DePalma and Senator Seveny, who've also joined us. Regrets from Representative Edwards, Canario, and Senator Felag, who had prior existing commitments. Also, I'd like to welcome Chief Jones, Lieutenant Raymond, where'd he go? Lieutenant Costa, and School Resource Officer Black, who have also come to speak with us. So I'm going to turn over to Mr. Rierick and then to members of law enforcement and either of the senators to speak, and then any of the committee members, and then we'll open it to the public for questions or concerns that they would like to raise. So Mr. Rierick.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Larkin. I'd just like to reiterate for the public, I would like to talk briefly about Friday's training session that was in the news. The training session that we had last Friday was one that had been planned for at least 2 months, maybe even longer, in the making. And it's part of the school department's efforts to go to what's called ALICE training protocols. And ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And it's a different kind of protocol that we're used to running here in the school department. We will be converting over to the ALICE protocols completely at the start of the school year next year. But Friday's session was twofold. One was to provide teachers who volunteered, who wanted to participate in our first ALICE training, to unfortunately experience what the sounds are like if there was an active shooter in our schools, and also how to react in those circumstances. And we had two training sessions at each school, at Fort Barton and at the high school. We had about 90 teachers at the high school participate. We had another 30 or so at Fort Barton. And I think everybody, all the teachers, after getting feedback from them, I think they thought it was a very positive experience. It's our first step. We will have full training. Everybody will be required to participate in the training that they did on Friday before the start of the school year next year. All our teachers and support staff will be trained, and there'll be some other protocols that we'll be working with the police department on implementing prior to the start of the school year next year. Since Sandy Hook, and unfortunately it seems, as I said in the news, it angers me that we have to have these conversations, because it just keeps continuing. With that said, we have to be responsible for ourselves and for our children's safety, because no one else will. And I believe we have, as a district, and working in partnership with the police department and the fire department, we've implemented a series of changes over the last 4 or 5 years that have made our schools safer. Can we do better? Absolutely. And we continue to do so, continue to strive to do so. My administrators are meeting with their teachers. They're having conversations. I met with Mr. Ashley, the high school principal, today regarding meetings he's had with his staff and recommendations they're making to him. We're trying to implement in short order. But it's an ongoing process. Some of the things that we've done since Sandy Hook, we're in the process of completing a double entry system. You might have read about it in the newspaper. Other districts on the island are going to where we already are. That is, you have to buzz twice to get in. We're currently still waiting on the doors for the middle school, but we hope to have those up and running shortly. So what that does is it means someone can't just get buzzed in and off they go. They have to get buzzed in a second time. They have to look at a camera. And for those of you who've been if you've been to the high school or to the other schools, the elementary schools, they all have that double entry buzz-in system now. We have safety plans that have been approved by the police department and are reviewed annually. Each school conducts 2 lockdown drills every year. We also have exterior cameras located at our schools. We have interior cameras here at the high school and the middle school in some of our hallways. And we're currently, as I just mentioned, doing our ALICE training. So I'll turn it over to the chief.
Good evening. It wasn't, unfortunately, to echo the comments of the superintendent, too long ago that I was with Chief Blakey and we had a similar meeting about Sandy Hook. And now, unfortunately, given the tragic events in Florida, we're back here again. And I remember several parents were asking the question, and I'm sure the question will come up tonight, are your schools safe? And I can tell you that they are. And again, based on what we've received from the board, the school teachers that were involved in the training, and the superintendent, we're here to make them safer. There is a laundry list of issues that we're talking about, and I'm sure, as all of you know, this is a national conversation. It's not just something that's going on in Tiverton, it's going on in school systems across our country. I can tell you that one thing that we had planned this training weeks, months ago. The initial training for the school teachers took place so they could get the classroom setting of ALICE, and this was the practical exercise. Unfortunately, it happened within 24 hours of Florida, but we looked at it as a strength. It was something that I'm sure, as parents and as people who have your children in our school system, you're going to ask the questions of your school administrators, what are we doing? And within 24 hours, you saw the police department, the fire department, and the school teachers running active shooter drills. And we're going to make this, in speaking with the superintendent and the members of the school committee, mandatory for the school system and school teachers moving forward. This is not just a one-shot deal. We're not going to wait till the next tragedy. It is, I can tell you, speaking for the police department and the reception and the cooperation and collaboration that we received from everyone, this is going to be something that we're going to be working on for the foreseeable future. Again, and to speak to tactics, we all remember Columbine, unfortunately, where the police response is they got an army of police, they'd wait outside, and then they'd go in with a SWAT team. And we found that that didn't work because these sick individuals were killing children. Then we saw Sandy Hook, and they'd get a number of police officers in a small group, and then they'd enter. We saw that that didn't work either. So now we're at a level that, and we've talked about it, I spoke with the officers who are here present tonight, and the officers who responded and were part of the training. We're prepared and we know what we're going to do. Heaven forbid we have something like this happen in our community. But it is our job, and we're going to continue to train and prepare for this, that we're going to go in, even if it's just one of us, and our protocols will show that we have to neutralize that threat. And I can assure you that's what we're prepared to do. We hope we never have to. But that's where we're moving forward in looking at bolstering the security of the schools and protecting our children.
Thank you. I don't know if either of the senators would like to address the committee or the public in general. Thank you, Senator DePalma.
You're
Senator
welcome. Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief, and I'll give you obviously time for Senator 70 as well. Obviously, we'd like to be coming before the Tiverton School Committee, but clearly not on this issue. Nobody wants, as you all said, nobody wants to be discussing this issue, no matter where it is. I'm originally from Connecticut. Newtown wasn't very far. I have a brother-in-law who lives next door to a grandfather who lost his grandson. He was 6-year-old in Sandy Hook. And it was not a great situation for anybody, whether you're 5 years old, 6 years old, 16 or 17. We expect to send our kids to school to be safe. It's not. So it's, unfortunately, it's this time in society we're living in. We have to see how do we address it to make certain they can be as safe as they're going to be and move forward from there. So I'll talk about a couple. So there is some legislation that's been submitted. There's more that will be submitted, and I think the big one, another one will be submitted next week. That's the assault weapon ban. That's going to be put in next week. And it's expected to mimic what Senator Feinstein from California has submitted, and probably mimic more like Connecticut than Massachusetts, because I think it's going to list and enumerate. I was surprised to see how many weapons are listed on there. I've never owned any. I was surprised to see how many assault weapons are listed on that Connecticut has on the list. And printing out the bill from California, it's like 65 pages, but not all 65 pages of weapons. So we'll see that coming forward next week. I suspect there'll be many sponsors, both in the Senate and the House, on that. There's some other ones about magazine capacity. Let Senator 70 talk about ones that he's a prime sponsor on. But just know that the General Assembly is paying attention to this. We need to get this over the goal line. This is the time of this is the year to get it over the goal line. We have to do everything in our power to make certain schools are safe and society is safe where it needs to be safe, and this tragedy doesn't happen again, period. And we'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Senator?
having us. I was watching TV this afternoon, and I saw a portion of the meeting that the president had with the high school kids and their parents and the other folks at the White House today. I mean, it's really heartrending to hear our children, telling us, what common sense looks like and what should have been done perhaps years and years ago. So in the General Assembly here, we're going to try to do what we can. There is a legislation coming out that's sponsored. The prime sponsor is Gail Golden, Senator Golden, and that's it's going to limit magazine capacity to less than 10 cartridges. Lou mentioned the ban on assault weapons, and I sponsored a bill for to ban the bump stocks. Some of the stuff is it's absolutely shocking. I spent almost 22 years in the military, and until that horrific event in Las Vegas, I'd never heard of these things. There's bump stocks. There's things called binary triggers, trigger cranks. All these things do is greatly accelerate the rate of fire on what otherwise is a semi-automatic weapon that only shoots as fast as you can pull the trigger. I mean, these things, in fact, become machine guns when you put these attachments on them. So we're going to try and get rid of that stuff too. We've got to get these kinds of weapons out of the general public's hands. I just don't believe they should have ever been there. The kids have been calling these weapons of war. I grew up with these. I've trained on nearly all of them, and that's their purpose. There is no other purpose. There's no reason to have a magazine with a lot of bullets in it. There's no reason to have a gun that fires a bullet at 3,000 feet per second. These weapons were designed for people under stress, under fire, to be able to shoot and hit something and knock a person down. That's what they're designed for. The bullets tumble. Some of them fragment when they hit you, and it's just horrendous. And there's no reason to have one. A good dog and a shotgun for home defense, I think, is probably the best system you can get. So we'll do the best we can. I would the one ask I have would be to come to the State House and show up and make your voice heard, because there's lots of people out there who do not think like I do, or Lou, or some of the other senators on the House side. I hope, there is a growing hope that we've reached some sort of a tipping point. I mean, the thing with this latest tragedy is that the survivors, the kids that were there, can stand up and speak, and they're articulate. Some of them are actually eloquent, okay, and they're telling us. I think they're telling us what we already know, but they're speaking out, and I think perhaps that will help get us where we need to be. And in terms of the other stuff, I mean, every school is doing, I think, what Tiverton is trying to do with the physical security and the access control, the communications, the drills, all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure you all know what happened in Portsmouth a couple of weeks ago. Okay, that was a really near miss. For whatever reason, that intruder calmed down after he gained access. He didn't take that knife that he had in his backpack out, and that extra few minutes gave the school resource officer time to be on the job, and she was right there, and she arrested him. But that was a near miss. It scared the hell out of everybody. So I think what you're doing are the right things to do, and I hope to God that we can hold up our end up in the State House. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. If you guys could let us know when those hearings occur, we'd be happy to try and support that. I think just to echo some of what you're saying and what Mr. Rurick has said is that it's our responsibility and it's up to us to protect and defend our children. I think we know that we will not have legislative action from the Congress, and so it's encouraging to know that our local representatives are pushing these things forward as we as a school district and as a community will continue to do so. So I'd like to open it to any other members of the school committee who have questions or of Mr. Rurick or Chief Jones or the senators, or me, I guess. Mrs. Black, Mrs. Pavo.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank the police and the fire for the drill, all working together as a community. And I was telling people when I saw them out in front of the White House, the teenagers, and they were saying, hey, NRA, how many students are going to die today? I reminded myself of when they stood out and said, hey, LBJ, how many soldiers are going to die today? That was us. That was teenagers, young people that had had enough. And I see that now. And I know I love these schools, we all do. And we're taking all these precautions. I taught at Derby High School during Columbine, and it was all about intervention. But it was first about prevention. If we can make connections with these kids. When I started teaching, you walked in the classroom and the students stood up and they said, good morning, Miss Manning. And if you had a book, they'd say, may I carry your book? And when I went back in 1993, they'd shove you in the locker without looking at you until you made that connection. If you were able to connect with those on any level, that's what saved them, that's what saved the school, and that's what we do here. I've got my shirt on from the anti-bully, the Tiverton Prevention Coalition, the Peer Helping Network, because kids talk to kids. And the kids in that Peer Helping Network aren't the student council and the AP and honors. They're the kids that connect with the kids, and we learn so much from them. And I'm so proud to be a member of this school committee and a member of the Tiverton School Department and system. My 6 kids went here. My youngest son, that's when the Peer Helping Network started. And all the things we try to do. Prevention has received over $1 million from the federal government for all these things. It's not just drugs and alcohol. We have bereavement groups, anything that the kids need, and we've brought all that money in. And the only reason we have is because we meet once a month on Monday. It's consistent. We're doing what needs to be done. You can't just go and apply for those. It's very competitive, and if you haven't done it, they're going to say no. So I'm just like to say welcome here, and I want to hear what you all think, and I want to hear from the students, but I'm very happy to be in this community. Thank you.
Ms. Palish, anything?
I want to say that I don't want to say this is the start of conversation. This is the continuing of the conversation, because I see a lot of faces that were here for when we sat here and we talked after Sandy Hook. We had I think, a real good common sense, thoughtful, deliberate approach as a community. We implemented Alice. We did the double door entry. We did the lockdown drills. We brought back our SRO, who, before I forget, he was recognized privately to us for everything that he does, so I want to do so publicly. We have that partnership with our SRO is extremely, extremely important, and he really lends something to our community that we just wouldn't get otherwise. So I just wanted to quickly, publicly acknowledge him. But we're going to continue the conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to be thoughtful. We want to be deliberate. And we want to do, as we did back then together, everything that we can in an approach that will not give people false security, but will give people security.
Thank you. Ms. Farmer?
Thank you. I think as we go through the evening tonight, there'll probably be a number of good suggestions for improvements, fixes, things that we can do to address security in our schools. I think really the biggest thing that we can do as people is to always be vigilant, follow all of the existing protocols that are already in place, listen to one another, be ever vigilant of things that don't seem right. And I think, too, it's incumbent upon us to continue with regular planning and training of all of our staff and even our students to always keep this at the top of mind and ultimately recognize that it really is the students that are within these buildings now that will be the agents of change. I don't think that it'll fall upon any of us ultimately in the long term. It's going to be these kids that are here today, and we owe it to them to do the best we can today and let them go out there and really make the change for all of our country. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, I sort of neglected, if any of the principals would like to speak or make any comments or ask any questions, I'll give you guys an opportunity. Anything?
We're all concerned. I think we'll listen to the parents and try to answer the questions. The individual schools or just in general.
Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to open it up to the public to come and ask questions or raise concerns or make whatever comments you choose to. I just ask that you come to the podium, identify yourself, and limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes in case there's a lot of people that want to say anything. So
Just quickly, Dr. Larkin.
Yep.
Just understand that because of safety reasons, we may not be able to answer in great specificity, and that we'll look certainly to Chief Jones and the superintendent where we may be getting into a area where you feel we shouldn't discuss. So it's not that we don't want to discuss it, but there are certain things when it comes to safety that we do not share with the general public.
And I'd just like to, one point I didn't touch on, and Mrs. Black did, is that part of our response as a school district, as it was back in Sandy Hook, and I go back as far, unfortunately, as Columbine when I was principal here at the high school, is that our students, your children, especially the old, middle school and especially high school age students, they're our eyes and ears. They hear and see things, and they're into the social media that we old people can't even fathom. I try to keep up with my 19-year-old daughter, and it's like talking to Bill Gates. And I had that, and that was an ongoing battle with her, because not that she was a great kid, but because she was so far ahead of me with all the technology and all the different websites. And one of the things that Mr. Ashley and I will be doing, and Mrs. Bolduc, is we'll be meeting with the high school, each class, and we're going to be, talking to them about just that. You see it, report it. Because they're our eyes and ears, and we ask parents the same thing. You hear something, it has to be, you got to report it to us. If there's one takeaway, is everyone keep their eyes and ears open and report it. As I said to the staff in an email and to the principals, we have to remain vigilant all the time. This isn't we've been doing this, unfortunately. I've been doing it for the last 20 years, trying to improve the security first at the high school and now in the entire district. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say so we can kind of get feedback as to how we're doing and what we can do better moving forward, and hopefully provide some answers for questions you may have.
Yes, Mrs. Black.
Just as Mr. Eric said, Captain Jones always told us, if you see something, say something. But the mantra was, snitches get stitches and rats get bats, and we had to change that into sharing means caring, and caring saves lives. So it's a whole different way of looking at that thing, because before they wouldn't say anything. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. And so.
No, and I think the students that have spoken, Senator Seveny mentioned it, I think we've all seen it. All the students that have been impacted down in Florida have been great advocates for improving school safety. And I think that, I'm sure it does, resonates with our students, because those are their peers. As Mrs. Black mentioned, this is their generation. This is their Vietnam War. They've grown up, unfortunately. That's all our 17-year-olds and 15-year-olds have known, our lockdown drills and security measures taken in schools. When we grew up, we never had that. We never even had to think about it. But that's the world we're in this generation, and that's why it's critical. And I know our kids, knowing them, they'll respond when we ask them to step up. I know they will, and we're going to be doing that in the next week or so. Thank you.
So just to give you a general sense of where we are moving right now in relatively broad outlines. So it was a coincidence that we were doing the lockdown training on Friday, less than 48 hours after the shooting in Florida. But this was a program we had actually begun to implement, I think, shortly after Sandy Hook, when I had first heard of it at a conference in North Smithfield, and we've sort of gone through some training for the teachers, and then this was a more realistic attempt to give them a sense of what they might face. We will continue to build on that, both in terms of the training. There's a classroom component as well as a drill component. One question I had, Mr. Rurick, was, I know we've done this for the teachers. Have we done it for other staff as well?
All our staff have taken the classroom component.
So all staff, regardless of their
videos,
teachers or
support staff
or
yes.
of some other source. And will they be involved in any of the
yes, we're going
drills as well? They're
going to be in the, everyone's going to be required to do the drills in August.
Okay.
Before the start of the school year.
Okay, good. And then over the next several months, we've asked Mr. Rurick and the other members of the administration, along with Chief Jones and the police department, to come up with recommendations where we can continue to improve, independent of the ALICE program, whether it be looking at the doors, looking at the cameras, all components of what makes a safe school, but still a school and not necessarily a fortress. And we will take up those recommendations and hopefully be able to implement those over the next short period of time.
And again, for the folks in the audience, some of the steps that we've already taken, we've going out to bid to replace the doors at Pecasset, the middle school, and some side doors here at the high school. In response to conversations we've had with our staff, and again, that has come up, the school committee approved at the last meeting to go out to bid. We'll have those doors installed hopefully within the next month, by the time we get the bids back and get approval and get them installed.
Thank you. So, anyone would like to come up and ask questions or raise concerns or
Your principals
make
are here,
comments.
so if you have questions about a particular school.
Go for it.
I'm Christina Hallman. I was involved in, I'm a teacher here and a town resident. One thing I just want to ask is, since we're talking about doing this again in August, could we supply some kind of counseling or something? I know myself and many other teachers, we were kind of shaking coming back today. A lot of us, I know myself personally, I was thinking of every scenario to get my kids out. And we were on vacation or mini vacation, and that was only running through my mind. Just one thing that I would like to see implemented is just having just someone to talk to, or a pinpoint person, or even if we rally before starting the day again. I think that was the only part that was missing for myself personally, but I kind of checked in with some people as the day went out, and I think that was something we kind of lacked a little bit.
And we talked about briefly that it wasn't long enough, and I think part of
Correct.
the length, we do plan on having longer sessions, but certainly have time for us to kind of talk, and if needed, we'll talk with the principals if we need to have some outside, folks come in, just maybe to run some sessions to kind of.
I just think that would help us
That's a
coming
great
back.
idea.
So that's my only critique.
No, that was good, because that's something we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, the
Thank
mental
you.
health part of that was,
Yeah.
it was very
And
hard.
again, and absolutely.
So, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Well, just to follow on, if no one's going to come up, I did want to read this, but I was going to read it later because this was very shocking to me. I'm sharing this with permission from one of our teachers. Today was our professional development day. We had an active shooter drill. The Tiverton police came in and we hid in the classrooms. They fired blank rounds. We were experiencing this as part of the implementation of a new approach, Alice. I knew it was a drill. I knew it was real. And yet it shook me deeply. The first gunshots took my breath away. I've heard gunshots before, but this was blisteringly real. It was happening in what would typically be my safe place. I cried. Others around me cried. It was very emotional. So many thoughts raced through my mind. This is nothing compared to what those children heard in Florida. But will I make the right choice if this were to actually happen? How will I keep 24 little people calm enough to get them out? You have seconds to make a decision, and this will impact lives. I've taught for 31 years. I never dreamed this would be a part of my repertoire. I am a teacher, a nurturer by nature. This is all so foreign to me, and it should be. I'm not a police officer or a bodyguard, nor I should be. Today was very difficult. I am glad I did it, but I pray every single day that I never have to use it. I want to send out a huge shout out to the Tiverton Police and the Tiverton Fire Departments. They were incredibly supportive and patient. They understand how difficult this was for many of us and did their very best to get us through it. I am thankful that I was with my teacher family and that we have each other as we navigate this new normal. So the impact that this I clearly had on our staff just cannot be underestimated. It's important, and I think they acknowledge that. But I thank this person for sharing it, because unless you were there, it's a.
Sorry, my voice is a little rough today. So it seems like this shooter from Florida, everybody knew about him. The police was called many times to deal with him. The FBI was called to deal with him, and nobody did anything. It seems like, or it still happened. So if this happens here in our community, and the police is called several times, and what are the steps? Like, what can we expect? From police, do you have the authority to? What is your authority to do something about that? Because now I have a little kid. My daughter's only 5 years old, and what is to say that, if somebody calls you guys and say there's something wrong with somebody, what's the guarantee that we have, or that you will do something about it, you know, and that will be followed up all the way to wherever it needs to be followed up.
So I'll say, are there any guarantees? There are none. I think we can all recognize that. I won't sit here and lie to any of you. The most prestigious law enforcement agency on the globe missed this. So, and they were given, I mean, I don't know many 19-year-olds that get interviewed by the FBI, but I'd like to think if they're getting interviewed by the FBI, there's a big red flag. I can tell you that we have a close relationship with the school department and the administration and the principals. Officer Black does a fantastic job. I mean, he's pretty much available 24 hours a day. I'm not, but he is, and he knows it. But with issues like that, and we actually talked about this, and this will be a subsequent component to the training that we want to offer the school teachers and the staff. A secondary component of this training is similar training that is used by the Secret Service and actually the Israelis, because they have one of the safest airlines in the world. And the Secret Service, they have dignitary protection. We're cautious about how we're going to approach this, but basically part of it is threat identification. We all know that there are threats that exist. Our schools are under attack by terrorists, and unfortunately, in certain circumstances, they live down the street from us. They've been in the classrooms, or might currently be in those classrooms. So what we're going to emphasize with the police department is that see something, say something. I mean, I know we don't want it to get cliched, but it works here. And as parents, as the superintendent said, with your children, they're the best source of information. Save parents. I think the next people that your child is spending the most time with are their school teachers. I'll challenge parents, being one. Do you know the name of your child's school teacher? Find that out. That's important information, because if there's change in behavior, they're going to notice it. And then you should have even an email communication. Pat was a little disturbed today. You know, is he okay? Is everything going on? Is he sick? Those kind of communications and changes in behavior are so important, because we don't want to turn teachers into police spies. We don't want to be in your child's life or in your life unless we absolutely have to, but we don't want to miss cues that we should know about. And there's the key. That if something's going on, that you feel that it is a school issue, you have counselors, you have the committee, you have your principals and your teachers, reach out to them. Make that communication and that bond. Because if you know something's wrong with your child, no one else is going to know better. And that's something that you have to recognize. And sometimes I can only imagine, and I mean, not given the case of the 19-year-old, but other mass shooters, how their parents are reacting to this. That my child has now become infamous for what they've done. Is it my fault? And those are issues that they have to deal with. We have to deal with our community here. So we are looking at ways, if you feel that there's an issue, I implore you, tag us with it. And it's not about ratting your child out, it's about getting them help. I would like to think that the vast majority of these issues are going to be handled between you and your school teacher, between you and the principal. Maybe it'll go as high as a counseling issue, but that's where it'll stay. If it comes down to an overt threat, I'm going to come in, I'm going to shoot up the school, I'm going to blow up the school. We all know, just because you're not wearing a badge, I think we all know that that's something that's going to require law enforcement action. And we're going to want that. And we have knocked on people's and parents' doors at 10:30 at night because their child has made a threat on social media. We've done that. And we want to look in their room. Again, I challenge you. Have you looked in your child's room? Do you know their passwords to their social media account? Do you go look in their cell phones? I mean, and again, I understand that our children nowadays, I have a 16-year-old daughter. She's very independent. She's brilliant when it comes to that stuff. And her dad's the acting police chief, a total drag. I mean, it's a total drag for her. And I get that. But we love our children. And those are the relationships that we have to build with them. And I'm sure you all have them, or you wouldn't be here tonight. So to answer your question, yes. I mean, are we looking at ways that we can better open up lines of communication? All the time. That's why we're here tonight. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Semad, and I'm a parent of a middle schooler and a high schooler here. I went through the Tiverton school system myself. I just want to reiterate what Mrs. Hallman said about the counseling, having not only for the teachers but for the kids. I don't know if there's anything already in place, but I think that kids have a hard time going to an adult and saying, you know, this is really bothering me. You know, kids are, you know, could have been afraid to come back to school today. And I just want to know that there's something in place for the kids where they feel comfortable in terms of education, in terms of what are troubling behaviors to look for in other kids. And is there some sort of anonymous way for kids to report, you know, sticking a piece of paper in a box or something? Is there an anonymous way for kids to report, you know, problems with other kids so that they don't feel that, you know, they're tattling or that they're going to get in trouble if they're wrong or anything like that? Just things to make the kids more comfortable with this, because it is something that we as parents don't have any experience with dealing with, and we can't comfort our kids because we have not gone through the same things ourselves. So that's just what I wanted to comment about.
I think as far as, it's been my experience that nothing's off the record. So if you have a child that is going through something, to put information in a box, and just being honest, it's going to, we all know who it's going to be. You know, just by the writing, just by the tone, I think where that child, that child's way of reaching out.
Right. Some kids don't feel comfortable.
And I agree.
Like I don't even really feel comfortable coming up here.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Talking in front of public, people are not used to that.
Right.
And it's intimidating. And if the kids are feeling intimidated, then they're going to be afraid to come forward. And they need to be educated, and they also need to be counseled that, you know, it's okay to have these feelings, and you know, they need to be comfortable with this just as much as the teachers do.
You ask a really good question, and it's one of the things that we are going to be, or I'm going to be discussing with our principals about how we, can we do more to create a better environment for kids to come forward if they have issues. I know a lot of our kids do go to their guidance counselors, they do go to their teachers, but as we tell our teachers, especially at the high school level, our kids aren't shy, and they'll talk right in front of you. You just have to be listening to what they're saying, and not that you're, you know, spying on them, but kids are pretty good communicators with each other, and if we're paying attention to what they're saying, and then also one of the things I plan to do when I speak with the students at the high school is to reassure them that it's okay. We want you to talk to us. And again, it's more than just an adult talking to them. It's a cultural question that I know our teachers here at the high school and at the middle school have good relationship with their students. And I'm sure, I know if our teachers do hear something, they'll report it up the ladder. Because to answer this lady's question, the response to her, when we hear anything to do with violence, weapon, whatever, if it comes to us, these gentlemen to my left are the first people the principals call. The principals don't call me first, they call the police department first. I then get notified after they're called. So we take any kind of safety threat seriously. And thankfully we do have a good relationship with the Tiverton Police Department and the Fire Department. I want to give them a shout out too, because they help us with students that are emotional. You know, they have emotional issues. Doesn't require the police to come, but we have our fire personnel and our EMTs, and they do a great job of working with us as well. But you ask a good question, and it's something that we will need to work on ourselves, you know, so that we create a better atmosphere for our kids to want to come forward.
And just to kind of reiterate what you were saying too, as far as, I mean, it could be a school violence issue, which takes definitely a precedent. It could be a bullying issue. It could be a child or a student that's having a hard time understanding something that's going on, whether that's outside of school or inside of school. And that's also something that parents, teachers, and again, I'm not trying to pass the buck, but for us to get involved, I think we just need to be vigilant. We don't want to be paranoid. We want to be vigilant that we recognize those cues and those signs in the way that the child, maybe the changes of behavior, or an overt act, like I'm slipping a note or I'm writing something down, that I'm trying to reach out, but I'm reaching out in my way. And that's okay, because the whole way of just reaching out is what's important, that the message is getting sent. We just have to be listening so we can get that message.
Right.
And I know I actually had a conversation with Councilwoman Farnsworth about
I know her.
about a bus issue recently on Main Road in front of Dollar General. Those of you folks who have children on the Dollar General bus, and we know Main Road. I spoke with the lieutenant, and I spoke with both lieutenants, and we put a police officer on the bus. Can't remember the last time that I did that, but it was and it was great because I wanted, and we wanted, the police officer to kind of get the perspective of what was going on. People going around the buses, being impatient, but also you might have thought I put Iron Man on the bus because the kids were like awesome. They were high-fiving, and it was great. So I mean, we're building those relationships, and I think that's good. And the biggest complaint that I get in my position is I don't know any of you guys anymore. I used to know all the police officers. We're working on it. We're definitely working on it, so you can have those relationships. So as a citizen, you can come to me. You know, and now we're working on it as the students and the children. They can go to someone too, and building those lines of communication.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Erica Hautala. I have a first grader at Ranger and a kindergartner that I'll be starting next year. Wasn't really planning on speaking, so I'm not great at this. But I wanted to say thank you very much for the things that you guys have started to do already in terms of the ALICE training and all that, because I've actually sat through the classroom portion of that a couple of times with my work. So I can't even imagine some of the teachers that have had to do the practical of that. Whoever spoke before about offering, counseling or some sort of like a breakdown session afterwards is probably a very good idea, judging by people in my office that have had to even just sit through a classroom discussion exercise of that. It's pretty tough. And speaking from a perspective, I lost a friend at Sandy Hook, and I had a personal interaction with the Washington Navy Yard shooter a couple weeks before that happened. And we also lost a family friend, coach of the family, at the Budweiser distribution facility in Manchester, Connecticut. So I know how important this is. I understand that the ALICE is implementing some sort of a muscle reflex memory for people to, there's no exact answer on how to do it, so how do you think in a situation like that? So I do appreciate all of that. My question is how are you planning on implementing that in an age-appropriate way to the kids? Because my kids have had lockdown since they were 3 months old. As part of the Navy CDC daycare. It's weird to have a 1-year-old locked in a closet, but you learn to function around it, and it's a good thing because it does teach them the right things to do. With the ALICE training, I know that's different than what the students have been used to doing all this time. I guess what my question is there a plan in place to, age appropriately, high school kids are going to be different than elementary school kids, teach them so that they can back up the teacher and they can know what they can do in a situation like this?
The answer is we are in the process. We have to do that. We haven't gotten there yet. But it's an excellent question because it is age appropriate. Yeah. High school students can do different things as opposed to your child who's 5 years old.
Exactly.
A lot different. We're aware of that, and we work with Lieutenant Raymond and Officer Black, and we will be working with them on developing the protocols, for lack of a better word, that and it may be even different from 4th grade to kindergarten, and we're going to try to make it as age appropriate as we can so that the teacher knows what to do, and it's just something that we have to work on and gradually practice at, because as you said, it's a new way of thinking for our teachers. It's not a lock and cover drill, like a lot of districts do, like you saw on the news last night. Not that didn't save a lot of lives, it did, but there's also why we do the ALICE is to get people out as soon as we can and not allow an active shooter to go from room to room and commit that kind of violence that we've seen. But that is something that we are aware of and that we have to implement. We haven't gotten there yet.
So we're thinking August for the second all staff.
Yep.
What are you thinking, you guys? You've been to the training. Like, how soon after your teachers are comfortable do you start pulling into the students?
Easy question.
I think it depends on, the age.
Maybe start at the high school.
Yeah, and then kind of trickle down.
Okay.
I know they offer books for kids that are in like elementary school.
Okay.
That they offer, teachers kind of go through it, I think there's like a saying, like, I don't know where they like, don't be scared, be prepared, stuff like that. So, you can't really ask someone in elementary school for like help as far as like breaking a window to get onto like the roof of the third floor, where you could, a high school student, or to even counter, if you truly did like reach the room. So, if you're an elementary school teacher, you kind of like have a flock of little ducklings following you, and it's a lot more difficult.
So you guys, while you're training the teachers, not to try to give away, but you're training them in those areas as well? Okay.
Yeah. Like specific to the area that they'll be in, most of the time. It's not like a blanket training.
So once our teachers are trained, then where we can, we will start pulling in the kids. I know you had mentioned that.
Correct.
Okay.
And like Officer Black said, we understand the limitations.
Yeah.
I mean, because, and we, even during this drill, we had elementary school teachers.
Yes, bring it up.
They were there, and they were talking about, I'm going to have, my kids, two of my kids that are a little scared underneath my arm. How am I going to do some of the training that's required? And we said, you're not supposed to.
Right.
I mean, it's an abridged version of, and the acronym, evacuate. I mean, it's the whole purpose of the entire program is to heighten awareness, and that's what it's about.
Know your options, know your limitations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're a kindergarten teacher, it's going to be a little different than if you're an 11th grade gym teacher, because you're going to have you have different skill, you have different responsibilities with the children and students. That you'll have children, and then you'll have young adults.
Exactly.
That'll make a difference, and that's the beauty of the ALICE training. It takes all those issues into account.
Yeah. And I did have a conversation, we're pretty open about this at home just because of the length of time that they've had to deal with this and the number of personal interactions we've had with our family. And I asked my 7-year-old this evening, I said, she talks about what they do during lockdown, where do they go, differences between kindergarten and first grade, what they do. And I asked her, I said, well, what if you were in the bathroom? What do you do? She drew a blank face. And I was like, so there probably are holes in this way that we teach right now. There probably should be more discussion as to if there was a lockdown or a fire alarm and you are in the bathroom, what do you do?
Right.
Do you stay put? Do you run back to the classroom? Where are the pieces that are missing here that the kids can be, like, at least procedurally the kids can know what they're supposed to do. They know they're supposed to follow the teacher, but what if they're in a spot where there is no teacher?
Right. The Florida incident was a fire alarm.
Yeah.
So, and because the smoke grenades and other issues that were used by the intruder, and then it was the school staff and the administration that had a code red to put everybody into lockdown, because that would have been, it was a massacre, but there were so many people congregating in the hallway. So then they had to reverse it. They had to get them into their rooms to lock them down. But you raise a valid point.
Yeah. So knowing different situations is probably helpful for the kids. But
Yes.
thank you for what you've done so far. I think it is proactive for a school community to be talking about ALICE. I know a lot of surrounding towns aren't at that point yet, so I do appreciate that as a parent of a couple students, up and coming in the town. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
One of the things I would offer is we go through 15 drills a year. We call them fire drills, but they're not all fire drills. And some of the training that we go through with our elementary kids, goes exactly what was described. What happens if they're not with their fire actors? And they should go to the closest adult they find. If it's a custodian, if it's another classroom, and then when we get outside, when we get out to our meeting place, that's when we get back to our classroom teachers. And all the classroom teachers are taking attendance to make sure everything's on. So, as we get more into this training, some of our evacuation training is going to change because our protocol.
Yep.
But we go through a lot of training right now, and we'll continue to do that.
And I would just add from the high school, in the recent question about students, I've had recent conversations with students and encouraged our teachers, and many if not all of our teachers have started classroom conversations, and we're starting a school conversation about their involvement. It does seem like they are interested. and they're asking good questions. You know, what do we have more of a role than simply the lockdown? So this is definitely something that we're going to continue with them. And as Superintendent Rear talked about, the students have a key role in this. You know, we're going to want their voice in helping us figure out the best way to get there.
You'll be surprised at how resilient the little kids are. I taught first and second grade in Middletown, where I did the Alice training, and we taught the children how to, we followed the book that Officer Black mentioned, which is Julia Cook wrote a book, Be Prepared, Don't Be Scared, Be Prepared, which is an Alice book that most of the teachers have in the elementary level, and the teachers can use that to bring forth the concept of Alice in an appropriate way, so it's not scary to them. It talks about their teacher being a shepherd, and they're their little sheep, and then it's the big bad wolf that would be the intruder coming in. So they're not as scared, and they're taught that they can counter with anything in the classroom. They are taught to run in zigzag motions and meet their teacher in a specific place. And I will say that kids as early as kindergarten were taught this, and they can do it, and they're amazing. And we'll reiterate, oh, no, if there's a big bad wolf, I'm going to go right to my tree, and that's what I'm going to do. And my teacher will be there waiting for me, and so will all the police. So the little ones will really surprise you, and they step up, and by the time they get to Dr. Mitchell and Mr. Ashley, they'll have a good background once we get this swinging into place. Because that's our major goal, is to keep them all safe.
If I may, coincidentally, last Wednesday morning, we have program at the middle school. Also, a short time thereafter, I heard what I thought were gunshots. This was well before it took place in Florida. I was happy that it was wrong. I called Officer Black. He checked out. There was a fire on 177 as the cans were bursting. So we are always hyper vigilant, and we're always doing evacuation drills, fire drills, programs. We not only meet and exceed state drill requirements each year. Our fifth graders, we actually have extra drills for them. We, as they come in the first few weeks of the school year, we're getting acclimated to departmentalized building, going from one nurturing teacher to several nurturing teachers in the course of the day. It's quite a transition. So we have all of the performing various drills, just that grade level, and we chalk the floor and they follow that. And so we build on that for the next few years. Our teens and tweens in the middle school, I have to say, and I think Officer Black will agree, they are very forthcoming. They're very good reporters. We get intel from kids, I hate to use that term, wife of a retired Stady / collaborator services. We get intel from the kids a lot, every day. We have a lot of safe spaces for kids to report. Obviously, the classroom teachers, definitely the student support services team, and even Coach Abney at this age. I was sitting and doing classroom art with an observation of the teacher, and a little girl came over and said, "Can I meet with you after this, Mrs. Mitchell?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "If I'm done with my work, I'm going to go to my office." And she reported something to me, but from her lens, it was concerning and it was making her anxious. All the way up to our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, they may not be as forthcoming with their parents as they were when you were their heroes, kindergarten through grade 4 or so. This grade group takes over, but so do some really good role models at the middle school. We continue to create safe spaces there, and we are always breaking protocols. We are always vigilant, always trying to balance nurturing, caring, educational space with protecting our kids. You can always do more, you can always do better.
Hi, Jennifer Jocelyn. I have 2 students in Tiverton School District. I have one at the middle school and one at Picasset. And I have a question about the codes. One of the things concerning on 2 levels is we never get anything or that says this code is this code is this, and this is how your child reacts, so that when you come home as a parent, to have a conversation with a 7-year-old about why he's hiding in the cubby or what he does during this one or another. The other thing is I volunteer at the school a lot. And as a volunteer, we don't know what the codes were. One day we were in the building for a code blue. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that means there's somebody in the building, if there's something. And we don't, as volunteers, know how to react when that code is called. I know you can't tell everybody everything that goes on during the thing, but as a parent, to have a discussion or to be in the building, you don't know what to do or how to react.
It's a good point on the volunteers, and that's something we'll need to work on. We don't give out the information on the codes for security purposes, even though we may say the word, but we don't want to explain, what it is for the sake. I know as a parent you want to talk to your child, but there are some things that we have to keep to ourselves. But certainly if you're working in the building, if you're a volunteer, we should make you aware of that, and that's something we'll improve on and take under advisement and make sure that happens.
Thank you. And I have one question, and I apologize, I came late, so if it's already spoken about. The cameras that are at the schools, specifically Picasset, I believe there's 2, one at the front and one at the back, but not at a side. Are those going to be added on?
We are looking, that is one of the things that we are looking at with the police department, and we'll be making recommendations to the school committee on regarding adding cameras, but also improving the quality of the cameras for the pictures that we do get. So yes, that's something that we're going to be looking into.
Perfect, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Liz Hahn. I have 2 grades. I have a 5th grader and a 7th grader at the middle school. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing the ALICE training, all the teachers, professional staff, keeping our children safe, which is our #1 priority. My question, I've been hearing everything is during the school year, during the school times. Is there anything being done after school? I know the middle school has the Tiger Cubs. I know there's chorus practice, strings practice, you name it, basketball. What are the protocols for those situations? I'm not sure if you could answer them, but coming from a parent's perspective, the day after the Florida shooting, there was multiple doors open at a school with a teacher at a desk with no walkie, no cell phone, no nothing, doing a crossword puzzle. And that just really, and I had a conversation with that individual briefly, and I was going to bring it up, and I haven't brought it up yet just because of vacation on the drill and so forth. But leaving that on that Thursday, I was a little shaken up because it just literally happened, and we're not securing those doors, even though majority of the students have gone. There's still our teachers in there, our valued teachers in there. There are kids in Tiger Cubs. There are chorus practices, string practices. Even though the school is not at capacity, there's still potential. Anyone can walk in any one door and hide for the next morning. Who knows? I know it takes, we can go far-fetched, to so many extremes, but we just need to look at every little angle. Our sports, we have our sports. I know I went in the wrong door earlier today, not gonna lie, and they were all wide open. No one even questioned anything going on. So I'm not sure what the protocols are for that. Anyone can come in throughout the school. So I just want to address that as well.
I think after school, the doors should be closed at the end of the day. They shouldn't be open at any time during the day. We have a single entry system at all the schools, except at the high school, where we do allow the flag door entryway to be open. We just implemented a new time, 7:15 in the morning. You can't get in the building, so we can't have anybody in the building prior to 7:15. And then we're going to have people, teachers stationed at those doors to make sure that they're closed. After school, they should be closed, and then that's something I'll be talking to my principals about. That should never happen. Those doors should be closed at all times. But again, what we have to do is we have to police that. We, meaning our community, if somebody sees it, close the door, but also let us know that, like you're informing us now, that's unacceptable. And we need to know about it so we can, make sure it doesn't happen. As far as with kids coming in and out of the gym, here at the high school because of the teams, that's something we have to re-examine. The old way of doing it, we just can't do what we've been doing. But that's an excellent point about the after-school activities and how it's addressed.
I know coming here today, there must have been at least 5 doors unattended open. And so anything could happen at any one time.
Tonight, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, at night is different, because at night, they become not schools, but they become public buildings. And many of organizations outside of the school system at night use rooms for meetings, because they belong to the taxpayers.
Sure.
So our policy has always been these are taxpayer buildings. So we have various meetings going on throughout the night. So definitely, I don't know how, I think if there's going to be like this meeting or a meeting or something, they get opened.
They get open at a certain amount of time prior to the meeting so people can come in. But the doors should be closed, and we tell our custodians, and after they're done cleaning the rooms, they're supposed to be locking those doors.
So after school is a different issue, I think, than at night. But good point.
But it is a good point, and something that we need to look at.
But just something,
No, it's an excellent
sometimes we
point.
don't think
Thank you.
about all the after-school programs.
No, thank you.
important
It's
to
a
make
great
sure.
point.
But thank you so much, everyone, for everything that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the input.
So just to follow on that, I think, it remains that this has been an ongoing discussion, at least since Sandy Hook and before as well. One of the important things to keep in mind is that it's vigilance that actually is going to be our best protection, that we need to continue to be aware of these issues and to sort of retrain ourselves, recommit ourselves to all of this. And in fact, we were even discussing previously in our session that we have taken up security, several times a year, but I think we need to be more regularly addressing that, and perhaps even forming a specific subcommittee that might involve some parents and teachers and administrators. But it is, an ongoing process of going, continuing building on what we've done already, as well as continuing to remind ourselves and each other of what's important to maintain to keep our children and teachers and all staff safe. Along those lines as well, is there capacity or ability to accelerate the training a little bit? And in particular, I'm, concerned about having the office staff who are really likely to be the front line for any intruder, because they're going to be the ones to buzzing in perhaps before August to get some of that training done. What do you think?
That's something I can work with Chief Jones with. Again, the secretary, because it was a day where our support staff didn't have to work.
Right.
But we invited for the first round of training, we said the secretaries could come if they wanted to. And I believe we had one who was available and did attend. But that's something I can speak to.
I think
Chief Jones about.
I personally, and I suspect many members of the community and the committee are feeling a greater sense of urgency since yet again this has happened. And I think, God forbid it ever does, but we'll all be asking ourselves, did we do enough? Did we do everything we could? So, anyone else would like to come up and speak?
Come on up.
Please. It's what we're here
I
for.
brought my pad. I don't mean to stir the pot. I'm Emily Johnson. I have 3 children. I live in town. I've also substitute taught in the school system. I taught kindergarten as a 1-year position last year, so I've seen both sides. I volunteer in the classroom quite often as a mom. And as an educator, I have kind of a different perspective on things. So I just wanted to point out some very specific things that I've seen. One thing, the cameras are not always working, and it goes longer than it should, in my opinion. I think that's the utmost priority, more important than fixing anything else in the school. The doors and cameras should be next day or same day. We have plenty of skilled people in this town, businesses that could do that. I don't think it should go in a ticket that goes to a list. It should
Unfortunately, we have laws we have to abide by, and one of those is how we go out to bid for things. So we certainly can try.
I asked our attorney
fast
today,
track things as much. Yeah.
and the attorney said we have to go out to bid for these items. And I accept just what you said. I said, these are things that these are things that
it's not your fault.
No, but and believe me, I asked the question today, and I got an answer that I didn't particularly care
So
for.
what do we do as parents to change that?
The doors work. I want to be clear. The doors work. We need to improve the strength of the doors and to make sure that they lock after they close. But they do. Everything works. The cameras work. We are in the process. We will be buying new cameras in short time. Those are things that we can do.
Yeah, we can get those on an agenda.
The cameras we can do quickly. I mean, that's not through the bid process.
Oh, it's still not working. Like,
No, the cameras are one of the things that we are going to be working on.
Okay. Also, the codes, to build on what the other woman had said. I am in the schools as well, volunteering and subbing, and the codes are, to one point, overused, I would say. There is one that is towards behavior, if there's an issue in the hallway. The kids are desensitized to it. I think most of the time they hear it and they say, again? So if it was the one that we all fear, are they going to react the way we're training them to and that we're hoping them to? It's just something to put out there to the principals, and it's a concern. Just as we are to a point desensitized with the news, we hear it all the time. So now these kids are hearing code, code, code. That's a concern of mine. Another thing on the same lines, subs are not trained. I am, because I was a 1 year, I went through things and I see that, but as a general rule, they're not. We're happy to get a warm body in some sense, because we can't get subs. It's a statewide problem, and I know that. I haven't taught in the past. I'm just not just trying to get a job right now. This is at my point in my life when I don't want to work every day. So that is an issue. That's something that should be addressed. Same thing with BCI checks. Subs have to get them right away, but I found out this year that mine expired and I was not forced to get another one until I wanted to volunteer in the classroom with my son. So that's another thing. I mean, I hate to, like I said, I don't want to stir the pot, but it's things that people think they get.
We're not assigning blame, we're just.
Yeah, it's things that fall through the cracks. So I want to just point a few things out. And I guess my last thing, which is my most important, I just feel that social emotional curriculum needs to come back into the schools. There isn't one. There's no time for one. Teachers that try to put it in are considered, you're teaching fluff. That's fluff. We have to get 90 minutes of this and 70 minutes of this. And you see it over the generations. Now that we don't have time to sit and say, how are you? How was your day? What did you do with your family yesterday? Or is anything happening? There's no time for that. And I understand the academic rigor. Believe me, I want my children to do everything possible. However, I want them to be good little people. I want them to turn into decent humans. And when we pull that out of the classrooms, it just bears results. I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, something for you to maybe discuss at some point.
Yep. Thank you.
Happy to speak any other time with you privately if you want more, but those are things that just popped out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ray Cardozo. My daughter's in 4th grade at Barton. She was in the classroom that had an incident today. I just want to commend the substitute teacher and acting principal that recognized the situation and addressed it today. That was great. But the reason why I came up actually was to address your comment about following the laws of bidding. Well, the lawyer, you might want to have him revisit this because the state of Rhode Island just did something today. They can bid a unit price to fix a camera, to fix a door. If you put that out for bid, if something breaks, you can't have it fixed next day because you have a unit price. It can be done.
Look into it. Thank you.
So that's a good thing.
I will call
Another thing
tomorrow.
is, military man, a lot of training. One thing I noticed with my only couple trips to school, kind of people that do these mass shootings, they're looking for high kill counts. One of the best ways right away is entry and exit into schools. You have children and parents lining up outside of schools waiting to pick kids up or drop kids off. That is great target potential there. I don't think people should be lining up outside the school. Inside a hallway, teachers could verify parents who they are, get inside. Just very dangerous. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank all of you guys for coming here today and having a meeting for us. I feel much better about my kids going to school tomorrow. I work in the Providence Police Mall, and we've been in 2 lockdowns in the last 6 months. So, first, is there like any thought into putting like an app in place or one call text message? I know we get the phone call in the morning at 5 o'clock. There's no school today, but I think if we all had a text message that just said, "Hey, the school's in lockdown right now. Okay, now it's a safe point." That's what we get in the mall. And then I just want to thank you guys for like having a distinguishment between a fire alarm, kids being rowdy in the hallway, because that was one of the opportunities in the mall. So when the mall went in lockdown, we didn't know if it was a fire drill or if it was an active shooter. So thank you for being proactive with that.
Just to answer your question about the app, we do have the ability to send it out to each school to say, you know, whatever we're doing, and that's something we'll look into to make sure we do that, so we can communicate to parents better.
Yeah, perfect.
No, but we can do that.
So you're saying, so if there's a lockdown, you would want, say it's Cassett, an immediate something that you get on your phone that says my child's school is in lockdown, that's what you're.
Well, we can say we're doing a drill.
Yeah.
Well, right, we would be able to, we have that ability now.
So are you saying that you want that every time there's a drill, or you want that when it's real?
Drill.
Well, I think I would want both. So I would want the communication, hey, there's going to be a drill today, so I can warn my kids and get my kids ready for that so they don't overreact.
We may not be able to, we may not be able to tell you ahead of time as to when the drill's coming, but we certainly can tell you a few minutes ahead of time. And so you can talk to your child at home.
Yeah,
say, hey, how was the fire drill today?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, no, we can notify the parents 5 minutes ahead, 10 minutes ahead, and say, we're going to have a lockdown drill today at Fort Barton at 10:15. So you'll know as a parent, you know, that we're doing it, and then you can talk to your child afterwards. You know, I believe the parent who brought that up left, you know, about communicating. Well, that's one way you can, because we can tell you as a parent, and then you can, you know, talk to your child or children about it.
And we'll certainly meet with our
Absolutely.
professionals about where they think it might put, it might cause more harm than good.
The issue is, if we put out, even if it's a drill and we're not distinguishing, we were just kind of muddling amongst ourselves about that, especially given what you do. What are you going to do if you get that text message? You're going to jump in your car and you're going to go to school. Right, so we're going to have 500 parents, because you first might try to call the school, and guess what? The school's not going to answer. So you're going to jump in your car from wherever you are, and we're going to have 500 parents showing up at the school to pull their kids out. And so, that's, I understand, because I'd be in front of you driving to the school. I get it. I totally understand. But that's something. Right, so I get there first. I get it. So, but that's something that, you know, with drills.
That's different.
Right. That's something that, but also, the whole purpose of a drill is to add realism. You know, if you know a drill's coming, are you going to act the same? Probably not. So we want to do drills that are spontaneous. So we're getting the realism and not desensitizing, which seems to be an issue for the parents, the teachers, and us. If it was a real drill, or excuse me, a real incident, then broadcasting that out,
we wouldn't.
Yeah, we just wouldn't, because that would be a problem for us. And we hear the issues about the codes, which is something that we'll all discuss and look into. we want to give you as a parent as much information as possible, but there's that bond of trust that has to exist between us, and we know we have it. So you have to give us a little bit, you're putting your child on the school bus, you're dropping them off at school, and you're giving them to us, as more, giving them to them. But we support them, making sure that at the end of the day, they go home to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks. Okay, I'd like to thank Chief Jones, Lieutenant Costa, Lieutenant Raymond, School Resource Officer Black, Senator DePalma, Senator Sebeny for attending, and for all of you for coming to show how important this means to you.
Just saying, sir, if anyone doesn't like public speaking as much as I do, if you want to come up and hang and stick around afterwards and approach us privately, we'll be here.
Yeah, and towards that as well, our addresses and phone numbers, and I get hardly any calls, I'm always surprised, are posted on the internet. So we are available for
I know you do.
Other.
Share
Yeah,
Dr. Lincoln, can I just, one more thing?
Yeah, Ms. Polish.
While our senators are here, I really do want to thank you, genuinely, both of you, for trying to get legislation through.
Yes, absolutely.
So that we're going to be in a place, I'm going to cry, where we're not preparing for attacks, and instead our kids are preparing for futures. So thank you all.
And I just wanted, I said it to these guys privately, to the chief and his lieutenants. I can't tell the people in this town how lucky they are to have the police officers they do, that they truly do care about our kids. They care about you. They care about this town. And we've been able to move forward, and we will continue to move forward because of the good, strong relationship that we have with these gentlemen and women that make up the police department and our fire department. Thank you.
So I'll ask for a motion
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in